Hi, welcome to the Introduction to 3D Studio Max presented by 3dtutorial.com. My name is Isaac Oster, and in this lesson I'm going to talk about editable polys. So in the previous lesson we talked about primitives, but there's not much you can do with just a box or a cylinder or a sphere. The real magic comes when you can start with a base mesh like that, and then using editable polys, the tools located within editable poly turn it into something interesting and useful. So to get started, I'm just going to make a cube. So in order to convert this into edit polys, we want to right click on it, and it brings up this menu, and at the bottom you'll see an option to convert it to editable mesh, editable poly, editable patch, or NURBS. So we're not going to worry about anything right now other than edit poly. Edit mesh and edit poly are very similar, but they have slightly different feature sets, and I've never really used mesh that much, so I find poly to be very useful, so we're going to stick with that. So just click that, and what you'll see is a whole new set of menu options over here. So initially, let's just look at the first one right here, called Selection. Also, I'm going to hit F4 to go into wireframe mode, and by default, items in Max, when you select them, will get this this little bracket thing around it. And with the cube, it's really not necessary. Well, it's a little bit confusing because it's hard to tell. So I'm just going to click here, right-click here, and go to Configure Viewports, and turn off selection brackets. So you can see that gets rid of it. So this is deselected, and this is selected. So we still got the white outline. So this right here will take us into vertex mode. This will go into edge mode. This will go into border, polygon, and element. So each time you click this, it's basically going to give you a unique set of menu options for each component type that you're dealing with. So some of these are going to be consistent across different component types, and if you want to go back to the object itself, just turn it off, and now we're back at the object. So let's get started. So I will click vertex mode, and when I do this, I get an option box right here called Edit Vertices. The Edit Geometry tab will always be here, and these options will not change. Go to Edge mode, and I have Edit Geometry, and that's still going to look the same, but now I have Edit Edges. And you can see it's kind of hopping around a little bit. I'm just going to minimize subdivision surface. So here's edit edges, borders, and minimize subdivision surface again. And here's my edit border section. And edit geometry is still the same, and the selection options are still the same. I'm going to polygon and minimize subdivision surface again, and I've got edit polygons now. So that's how this is going to kind of work. This will stay the same, and then this over here will update depending on what the selection is. So for vertex mode, we have remove, break, extrude, weld, chamfer, target weld, connect, remove isolated vertices, remove unused map verts, and wait. So remove is pretty obvious. It removes. So that's what this looks like with that vert gone, and it sort of tries to make this all one shape, which is why it's shading in this kind of peculiar way. Once you delete the vertex, you also delete the edges associated with that vertex. Break is going to turn it into one vertex per face. So if I go to move mode by clicking W, and I select one of these verts, and pull it out, you can see what break does. And the opposite of break is weld. So I'm going to go ahead and do a drag select so I get all of these. And I can just click weld, or I can click the option box next to weld, and what that's going to do is bring up some settings. The way this works is there's a tolerance here. So all of the verts that are within 0.003 meters of each other will become welded. They will weld into one single vert. You can increase this or decrease it just by clicking and dragging. And you can see the result of that down here, the vert count before the operation is 10 and after the operation is 8. So if I drag it all the way to 0, I can see there's no change of the vert count, so there's no welding going on. But as soon as I bring this up a little bit, from 10 we are left with 8. So if I'm happy with that, I can just hit the check box here. If I want to keep moving around, welding different verts, I can hit OK, and this will leave this up, or I can cancel out. So I'm just going to go ahead and OK. This is the result of extrude. You can control the height of the extrusion as well as the width of it. Chamfer is somewhat similar, except there's no protrusion, it just chops the geometry there. And if you toggle this, you can actually you can make it so that the face gets deleted automatically. And target weld, rather than having verts weld together based on their proximity, what this allows you to do is weld one vert directly to another vert. Simply by clicking on one and then clicking on the other. And what connect does, if I'm going to right click now because I'm still in target weld mode, I'm going to right click to leave that and select two of these verts and hit connect, and you can see it connects them with an edge. So it's not real common to have this happen, but every once in a while you can end up with what's called an isolated vertex. So if you've got a whole bunch of them, it can be kind of difficult to get rid of them one by one. They've got a feature button here called remove isolated vertices, and if you keep an eye on this guy here, when I hit it, it goes away. So to show you what the weight does, I'm just going to start over with another object here. Convert it again to editable poly by right clicking, go to convert to, and select edit poly, and you can see it's kind of a different color, dark color, because that's the last command that I ran. So there is a feature called mSmooth, which is basically just going to smooth this mesh out, and then this is what it looks like when it's done. So if I'm in vert mode and I select each one of these verts individually, what you can see is the weight by default is set to 1. And the result when they smooth is everything gets sort of weighted equally, but if I grab one of these verts and I set it equal to something higher, like 5, and go back to object mode and hit mesh smooth, you can see how different that is. That mesh, or that vert, doesn't move, but the mesh still smooths. Okay, now for edge mode. So I'm just going to make another cube and right click on it, convert to edit poly, select edge mode, hide this. So grab an edge, and if I hit remove, that edge will go away. You can see there's some, it still keeps the faces there, but it doesn't know exactly how to smooth it, so it's doing the best it can. Extrude the options box, and you can see it's very similar to the vertex extrude. There's going to be a height and a base size, and if I have multiple edges selected, they'll make them contiguous. With split, you've got to have at least 2 edges selected, and when you do that, it'll deselect the edges, and if I grab this face now and pull up, you can see that it is basically just detached those edges at this vertex. And weld will have the opposite effect. I have a couple of, well, I'll select this edge here and go to chamfer. Oh, I actually do need to weld that, so let me cancel out of this. So I'm just going to grab all of these and hit weld, because the other ones that these never got split, so it doesn't matter if they're selected or not. So go to edge and chamfer. And again, this is very similar to what we saw with the vertex options. So bridge will actually loft a surface between two edges. So first of all, I'm going to make a hole here. And if I go back to edge mode and select one edge and another edge and just hit bridge, you can see what it does. But it's got some options. It's actually a fairly powerful tool. So I'm going to undo that and open them up. So if I just grab all of the external edges and I bridge it, it doesn't really know which edge goes to, yeah, so like where it should put this edge. So it's doing its best, but it's, as you can see, it's off pretty significantly. So I'm going to cancel out of that and select use specific edges. So by default it says use edge selection, and so whatever you got selected, it's going to bridge it. So with specific edges, you've got the first edge and the second edge. So I'm going to turn on the first edge and the second edge. And I can, at this point, go ahead and select these other edges and just do a bridge, and it'll be able to figure it out from there. Alright, I want to show you a little bit more with bridge, so I am going to create a plane. And duplicate it. Whoops. And for one of these, I'm going to make it, give it a little bit of a higher count this way. Convert them both to editable poly, and then attach one to the other. Go to edge mode and turn bridge on. So now I'm going to change this color. It's a little hard to see. There we go. Okay, bridge. So you can see it, as soon as I hit an illegal edge here, there's no way it can bridge to this, the whole thing kind of goes away. But if I just deselect that, then it comes back. So it doesn't have to be one-to-one. It can figure out you know, how to bridge multiple or different parameterized pieces of geometry. So another option you can mess with if you need to is spans. You can add more spans going across. There's also a flip triangulation, and you can see the result of that there. Okay, so in order to show you connect, I first want to show you ring and loop. So I'll just show you what they do. If I select an edge and I click ring, it selects the ring of those edges. And if I select loop, it's going to be the entire edge connected end to end. So again, that's ring and loop. So if you've ever heard somebody say stay in quads, as soon as you introduce a triangle, it'll follow up until it hits that triangle, and then it doesn't really know which way to go after that, so it'll stop. That's not the only reason to stay in quads, but that's one of the benefits if you are able to do that. Alright, so with connect, I need to select a ring. Really, I just need two parallel and contiguous edges. So what I mean by contiguous is they're sitting on the same face. So if I hit connect, I'll go to the options. It just adds an extra cut there. So that's segments. I can add segments. You can space out the segments. You can move them all in unison. Very useful. So the next thing I want to show you is create shape from selection. So what that allows you to do is select some edges, and then you can actually create a curve from that selection, and you can choose either a smooth curve and it'll give Bezier corners, or a linear curve. So I'm just going to pick the default, and here's the resulting shape. Now you can always go to vertex, select them all, and convert them to corners, and it'll look like your original selection. And one last thing I want to show you is the insert vertex button right up here. And it does pretty much exactly what you think. You can just insert all the vertices that you might want. Okay, next is going to be border, and border is the outside, all the outside edges, and they don't have to be the outside of the shape. They can also be the inside. Basically, just any border. So some of the things you can do with borders are you can extrude them. And we've got the same kinds of controls for extrusion. Chamfer. So this is segments. That cuts the hole. Cap, which is very useful if you've got a hole and you want to fill it up. And then to close it, you can either use bridge or you can do a connect. And then to do all three of these, I'm actually getting ahead of myself just a little bit, but I'll select these faces and then use the quick slice with vertex snap turned on. But I actually want that hole there. Again, that was cap. So here's bridge. First of all, I'm going to duplicate this object by holding Shift and dragging up. And I'm going to go to element so I can get rid of some of this extra stuff here. And an element is any series of faces where the edges and the verts are welded together. And I need to attach these two. So if I go to border, we'll see that same thing again. Yeah, I'll do it on the outside. When I hit bridge, where it seems to be kind of confused about how to attach this stuff. So the solution for that is grab the element, make sure you've got your angle or your rotation snap turned on, and rotate this 180 degrees, which you can see down here. And now when I select these and still in border mode and go to bridge, it's very nice, nice and clean. So I can add some more edges to it. Whoa. So what's going on here is the geometry is confused about something. It happens from time to time. There's a very, very simple solution. I'm going to cancel out of this, and in the last tab here there's a utilities menu, and one of them is reset Xform. So what that's basically going to do is all of the scale and rotation and translation information that is contained in this mesh here, which has somehow become corrupted maybe from all of the different operations I've been doing, it just resets everything. And it's very, very simple. So I'm just going to hit reset selected and then come back over to my modify tab, and what you can see is now there is an Xform modifier. So if I right click and convert to editable poly and try this again, bridge. Now I get the behavior that I was expecting. So one thing to mention about the reset transform here, by the way, so it says Xform, but it's really the transforms that are being reset, is if I rotate this guy and scale it, move it around a little bit, its position, all that stuff is sort of captured here. 71 degrees is this, or 71% is the scale, and 30 degrees in X is the rotation, etc. And this object knows where it is in space. So if I center the pivot by going to the hierarchy tab, mid tab there, affects pivot only and hit center to object, and I move this to local space, it knows how it's oriented relative to where it used to be. And I created it lined up with the you know, in world space XYZ. So if I want to get back there, I need to go back to world space. I can easily do it just by zeroing out these rotations. So as soon as you reset transforms, this is now its new 0 position. So it's a thing to be aware of. Okay, and finally we have connect. And what connect does is it creates a connection between the midpoints of two joining border edges here. So it's one edge, one border, but two different edges coming together. And it's got, you know, you can have more segments and space them out. It's basically exactly like the connect feature for just regular edges. Okay, let's switch over to face now. And I'm going to make a plane. Turn the grid off by hitting G, and right click to convert to edit poly. Face. So we have extrude. Bevel, which is like an extrusion except you can change the final size of the face. Outline, which is just really just a scale, keeps it planar. If you grab multiple faces, it'll treat them as a single unit. Inset, which will create a border, not this kind of a border, but a new set of faces inside a small border, and you can change the size. And we have bridge. So I just attach these two, and once again I'm going to flip it over. And the reason that I'm flipping it, or the reason it works better when it's flipped, is because the faces are pointing in the right direction. You can't really see it, but they are. So I'm going to grab a couple of faces like that and go to bridge. So we can add segments to it. Tweak it, twist it, etc. Alright, the last thing I want to show you is flip. And if you hit flip, it's actually pointing the faces down. So I said it wasn't easy to see, but it's really not that bad. So if they're red, they're pointing up, and if they're the stark green, then this is sort of the bottom of the face. Just flip it back, and now they're all pointing in the same direction. Okay, so element. We've used a little bit of element so far, but it's just the entire contiguous mesh. So like if I grab these faces and I click detach, and then I reattach them, each one of these is a separate element. So the editable aspects of these are pretty minimal. There's insert vertex and flip, which we saw with faces, and then edit triangulation, which isn't something that we need to worry about right now. So that does it for the component level. Now let's look at the object level. So to get to the object level, you just make sure that your components are not turned on. And the place where that editing is going to happen is right in here. So we already looked at quick slice, and it's just going to let you click and draw a line, and you will cut an edge in on that line across all of the selected faces. So if you're in a component mode, like faces, and you've only got, oops, let me turn quick slice off, a few of them selected, you go into quick slice. Even if you draw the line across all the faces, it's only the ones that are selected that will be sliced. Cut is going to do the same thing, but it'll allow you to be very specific about where your cuts end up. And it also is controllable using snap. So if I right click here, I can turn on vertex, or turn on end point and midpoint. You can see that I can very easily make some controllable cuts there. So if you've got two different pieces of geometry, I'm just going to center this pivot. I'm not sure how it got up there. So I'm going to duplicate this by holding Shift and doing a drag, and hit OK. So two pieces of geometry, and I want to attach them. There's a button for that right here, Attach. If I have any faces or elements selected, and I hit Detach, now I've got two different faces, or two different objects here. So you might have noticed, I'll just delete one of these here. When I have faces selected, and I hit Detach, it gives me this option here of Detach to Element, or Detach as Clone, or just Detach. So if I don't hit anything, what I get is two separate pieces of geometry. If I detach to element, what that's essentially going to do is separate these into two different elements. So I'm just going to select out everything and weld. So now it's all one element. If I grab those faces again, and I hit Detach, and this time I have Detach as Clone selected. Now I have two objects, but one of them is the same as it was, and one of them is a clone of what I had selected. Alright, so if I have faces that are kind of torn up and non-planar. If I select everything and I hit this Make Planar button here, it will find an average plane for all of those faces to sit on. But if what I want for those faces is for them to be horizontal or vertical, I have X, Y, and Z here, and what those will do is basically flatten all of the faces along these different axes. So if I hit X, that's going to squish it this way, which isn't really what I want. Y is going to squish it this way, which is also not really what I want, but Z will flatten it vertically. So I'm in world space, and I'm going to turn my grid on. So what it did is it took the average of the average heights of all of these faces, and it made them all go to that one height. So if I want to drop it down to the grid now, to 0, all I need to do is right click in Z, and it will be totally flat and at 0. Okay, next there's hide selected, unhide all, and hide unselected. So you can, if you've got different pieces of geometry, and this one's named plane A, and this one is plane B, you can right click and say hide selected, hide unselected. So if I had hide unselected, it'll hide everything that's not selected, and if I right click and say hide selection, it'll hide the selection. So that's object level, but you can also do the same thing on the component level. So I'm going to go to face and grab some of these faces and hit hide selected. So they are still there, but they're not in the way anymore if I wanted to do some modeling or tweak something where those faces were in the way. So I can right click and hit unhide all, and nothing happens because the faces that were hidden are on the component level. So I actually have to come down here to the edit geometry menu and hit unhide all. Okay, the last thing I want to show you that's maybe too many. Is the constraint section right here. So if I grab a component, actually I'll grab this vert here, and I constrain to the edge, what that means is I can move this, but only along an edge. Now, it's attached to a few edges, so I have some options, but I'm not allowed to really move it into the middle of this face. It's going to stick to that edge there. And if I have face selected, it will only stay on any of the faces that it's attached to. And then normal. What a normal is a perpendicular vector. So there's this face here. Might be easy to demonstrate this with face. Has a perpendicular vector right coming out of the middle of it, pointing straight off of it. So if I have normal turned on, I'm only allowed to move this guy along that perpendicular vector. So if you are modifying your geometry and you just need to do a subtle tweak and you don't want to make a big change to the silhouette, using constraints is really a nice way to do that. So there you go. That is Editable Poly. We will look at some examples of this, I'm sure. I think next week we're going to talk about graphite modeling tools, or UVs, I can't remember which one. So that about does it for Editable Polys. I hope you found it to be informative. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more 3D Studio Max tutorials from 3dtotal.com.